Let's do it. Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Environment and Sustainability Panel on Thursday, the 1st of August 2020. I'm Councillor Sam McCarthy. I'm a councillor for Shrub End Ward, and I'll be chairing the meeting this evening. Action in the event of an emergency. There are no practice alarms planned for this evening, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the town hall by going down the main staircase or the back staircase to the High Street and then to the car park behind the town hall in St Runmore Street. This meeting is being held in the Grand Jury Room in the town hall in Colchester, and is also being broadcast live over the internet, where it can be watched via the Council's YouTube channel, where the recording will also be available to view afterwards. Please, would members use microphones at all times and speak directly into the microphone. Members of the committee may also use electronic devices to access the meeting papers, and visitors are welcome to use mobile phones and other devices, including cameras, but please use them discreetly, set them to silent, and do not use voice or camera flash functions. There are toilets on every floor in the building and an induction loop in this room, and we'll have a short break at 7:30. Introductions. I'll now ask members of the committee and attending officers to introduce themselves, starting on my left.
Good evening, everyone. Mel Rundle, Head of Sustainability and Support to Panel.
Good evening, Simon Davison, Sustainability and Climate Change Manager.
Ben Plummer, Climate Emergency Officer.
Jane Thompson, Joint Lead Transport and Sustainability.
Emily Harrop, Transport and Sustainability Joint Lead with Jane.
Pam Cox, Councillor for Newtown and Christchurch Ward.
Councillor Julie Young, Greensted Ward.
Councillor Sue Lissymore, Prettygate Ward.
Kevin Bentley, Markstown Lair Ward.
Catherine Spindler, St Anne's and St John's Ward.
Matthew Evans, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you very much, everyone. Item 2, substitutions. We're not aware of any substitutions tonight. Item 3 is urgent items, and we're not aware of any urgent items. Item 4 is declarations of interest. Have we any this evening? Councillor Bentley.
Thank you. I know we're advised not to say we're members of other authorities, but since Essex County Council is mentioned numerous times in these reports, I am the leader of Essex County Council. I thought I should just say so. And if you don't need to put it down, fine, but I've said it now, so it's all right.
No, that makes sense, Councillor Bentley, thank you. Councillor Julie Young.
I just think I ought to report that I do a bit of work with Colchester Energy Company.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And nobody else. Excellent. Item 5 is minutes of the previous meeting. There are 2 sets of minutes to approve. There's the meeting held on the 21st of March and the one on the 22nd of May. Now, I wasn't here on the 21st of March. I think the panel is practically new, bar maybe a couple of members. So, Matthew, are we okay to still approve that? Yeah? Excellent. All happy with that? The meeting minutes? Yeah? Perfect. And then item 6 is Have Your Say. We've got a number of Have Your Say speakers this evening, and I'm just going to go through them in the order that I've got them here. So we're going to kick off with Rick Andrew, please. Hi, Rick. Many thanks. You've got 3 minutes to have your say, and after 2 minutes, a bell will go to remind you you've just got the minute to go.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. I've got 2 points to make. One about 20 miles an hour and the other one about onshore wind generation. I'll start with 20 miles an hour. Because Colchester and Essex have failed to implement any real upgrades to cycling and walking infrastructure. For example, Lexton Road, Crouch Street, East Hill, High Street and St Botolph's roundabout have all not happened. Colchester still has a very, very low modal share for cycling to work, school, etc., around 2%. I cycled here this evening, only met 4 people going the other way in the evening peak. That is very, very disappointing. The Transport Road Research Lab report, 580, says, quote, infrastructure and cyclist safety, of all the interventions to increase cycle safety, the greatest benefits come from reducing motor vehicle speeds. Also true of pedestrian safety as well, of course, especially safety of young children. So making 20 mile an hour the default speed limit on all urban roads, except dual carriageways, obviously, is much cheaper, quicker and more efficient way of encouraging cycling and walking, which is allegedly an aim of this council and Essex and other local councils, and should help to achieve the stated aim of fewer short sub 3 mile car trips. Wivenhoe, where I'm also a parish councillor, has just had a positive response from residents to making 20 miles an hour the default. A good response from residents for a small place like Wivenhoe. We had 392 in favour and only 70 against. So I would ask you to please consider making 20 mile an hour the default limit for all Colchester, because compliance is much better over a wider area. Thank you. So have I got a minute left? Thank you. Very briefly on climate change, the Climate Action Plan really only has minor measures and has no game-changing initiatives in there. Our new government has just scrapped the pointless ban on onshore wind turbines, which are much cheaper and quicker to install than offshore once you've got planning permission, and they've just made 1.5 billion available for new clean energy. So again, we live in windy parts of the UK. I mean, I know there's more wind at sea, but National Grid, who I used to work for, lose 30% of it in transmission. So we live in a windy part of the UK and have several suitable onshore sites, e.g. alongside railways or major roads and so on, large flat agribusiness fields which already have radio masts and so on. So we could become energy independent or even a net exporter to the grid. So please can we have a feasibility study to identify suitable sites? Thank you.
Many thanks indeed for that. Thank you. I'm going to delegate to a couple of officers. So on the first point, about 20 mile an hour speed limits, etc., I'm going to delegate that to Jane Thompson, if I may. And on the second point, Simon Davison, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. In response, in 2021, the Borough Council responded to the Essex County Council consultation on the Colchester Future Transport Strategy, which asked for views on a raft of measures to increase the proportion of journeys made by sustainable means. Our response consisted of support for their work, plus suggestions including some further changes and initiatives which we feel that they should concentrate on. And I quote from the report at the time, initiatives such as livable neighbourhoods, school streets, designated 20-mile-per-hour zones, protected cycling and walking routes, as well as the town deal bid for improved walking and cycling environment, can offer a significant start to working towards the vision, particularly in Zone 1, and provide opportunity to build on and expand in the future. We also said all schemes and traffic management measures need to be supported by suitable enforcement and measures to ensure traffic and speed restrictions are adhered to. The Borough Council understands that the role of the town centre is changing along with people's working and shopping habits, and would expect the strategy to be reviewed periodically to enable it to remain relevant and continue to push for the right transport solutions for Colchester. I must say that officers and I'm sure members continue to work with county colleagues on these issues and are involved in shaping new strategies and policies which help measures to make existing highway networks safer for all users.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. And on the second point, Simon Davison, please.
Yes, many thanks for your question. On the first point with regards to the onshore wind turbines and the release of that moratorium on that, we kind of welcome that. The council will be looking at potentially commissioning to develop an energy strategy, and obviously onshore wind, solar PV and other forms of renewable clean energy will form part of that strategy with regards to feasibility of how we proceed. On the second point, we also welcome the announcement of the £1.5 billion Clean Energy Fund, and we'll be looking to the applicability of that for Colchester City Council.
Thank you very much. Rick, you have a minute to respond if you wish to.
Yes, please. Thanks. Jane's response was very sort of general. Didn't specifically address the 20 miles an hour issue. I should perhaps have mentioned Rowhedge, which is a very good example of 20 miles an hour without any physical enforcement measures, which I know Mr. Bentley had a lot to do with. We were hoping that initially, a couple of years ago, rather than do anything unilaterally, we just joined the Essex Association of Local Councils drive to make all villages and 20 miles an hour, but unfortunately it didn't get past the relevant cabinet member. So I would like a more specific response about whether Colchester is seriously going to consider 20 miles an hour as a default for non-strategic roads.
Thank you. Because we're obviously time limited, I have copies of, and this goes for everyone, I've copied of everyone's statements here. So what I'm going to ask, if that's okay with everybody, is if we can't give specifics, we'll give you formal written responses as well, if that's all right, just for the sake of time and other speakers. Is that all right? Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, next we've got Kim and Wendy. I apologise, I haven't got surnames, so if you'd like to come. I understand you're both doing it together, kind of a half and half sharing thing. You're very welcome. As I said to Rick, you've got 3 minutes and a bell will go after 2 minutes. Thank you very much.
We would like to start by highlighting 3 facts. The first of these is that Colchester Borough Council is a leader in the region for action on the climate crisis. It was one of the first in the region to declare a climate emergency and at the time was considered a top-performing climate-friendly council by Friends of the Earth. The second is that the council's climate emergency plan recognises that achieving climate goals of becoming carbon neutral will require big changes and new ways of doing things. The third is that the food and drink we consume is a huge part of the environmental picture. According to the United Nations, around a third of all human-caused greenhouse gas emissions is linked to food. Of this food that comes from animals has an especially large impact. As the BBC put it, even the most climate-friendly meat option still produces more greenhouse gases than vegetarian protein sources like beans and nuts. According to research by the University of Oxford, changing what we eat is one of the biggest ways we can reduce our impact on the planet. With these facts in mind, we would like to ask the committee to seriously consider recommending that the Council adopt a 100% plant-based internal catering policy in response to climate crises.
We recognise that the Council probably doesn't provide much internal catering, but we still think this is a really important message to send. On the Council's website, it says that one of the ways that residents of the city can make a difference to reduce the environmental impact of their lifestyle is to cut down consumption of meat. We think it is important that the Council leads by example on this. If the Council is committed to fully plant-based catering for its own food, this would send a powerful message. Other councils in the country have already made this step. Earlier this summer, Calderdale Council in West Yorkshire adopted a plant-based food policy for its internal catering. The council leader talked about the decision as one of collective responsibility for the future, and the deputy leader confirmed this isn't about sneaking into houses to steal wafer-thin ham. We think a commitment to plant-based catering would be an important act of leadership by the council and urge this committee to recommend such a move. Thank you.
Thank you both very much indeed. So I'm vegetarian myself. I've been vegetarian for the majority of my life. It actually came from being a fussy eater. You know, like as a kid, it's like, you know, eat what you didn't sort of thing. I would eat the veg, leave the meat. And it just stemmed from that. And then obviously as time has gone on, I've become more active and more aware of the situation at large. So I'm grateful for this. In terms of internal catering, gone are the days, way before my time, where dinners and things were prepared here. So at Rowan House, the offices, I don't know if they have catering there. I'll ask. But again, I think it's actually a wider educational thing. And it's, you know, it breaks my heart, because in Veganuary, for example, supermarkets everywhere, it's advertised. 1st of February, it's all gone. The range is shrunk completely. Everyone goes back to their ways. So I would like to see maybe as a council, if we embrace Veganuary, that sort of thing as a start. I'm not, you know, how do I say this nicely? I'm not one for forcing things upon people. I mean, I'm a liberal. That's not the way I do things. And I'm sure that's not what you're saying either. But I think it's definitely educational. I would love to speak further on this, if that's okay, because I'm genuinely quite interested. But what we can do as a council at this stage, I'm not too sure. A disindication from Councillor Lismore.
Yes, I'd very much like to ask a question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I've been on to a couple of courses recently about sustainable farming, and I wonder if perhaps linked in with this, because you will get, you know, a lot of people, you know, within the council or visitors to the council who are not vegetarian, and I wonder if you would be willing to include a more sustainable farming interest. So, for example, not necessarily go full vegetarian, but to ensure that any meat products that are bought are, that they are farmed locally, that they are slaughtered locally, that they are transported with locally, rather than serving a soy product that might have been grown on old Amazonian rainforest, and imported from there. So I take from the nod of your head you would not be willing to add that.
A lot of what you're saying is actually incorrect, unfortunately. So this is what people think, but until they actually look into it, once you start researching it, all you realise that, for instance, I'm going to quote a figure which may be wrong, but it's in the right sort of area. Something like 80% of the soya grown in the world is grown to feed cattle. And people think, oh, that's all the vegans eating the soya, but it's not. It's grown to feed cattle.
Kim and Wendy, I'm just going to very politely interrupt you, if I may. I'm going to take this as your minute response, if that's okay, because I don't believe there's any other indications of people wishing to speak. So please,
sustainable farming.
you have a minute to play with, and please.
It's not sustainable farming, whatever people think. If you look into it, it's not sustainable farming.
Yeah.
By doing all the things this lady said.
We had to learn it ourselves
at
one point.
We've been studying it for years. So. I can see why people say that, but there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yeah. Once you dig deeper, there's a lot to learn from it. There really is. Yeah. Thank you for your question, though.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to write to you both,
Thank you.
and I'd love to discuss this further and learn a bit more, and I'm sure surely colleagues will as well. But yeah, thank you ever so much for coming in. I do appreciate it greatly. Thank you. All right, up next we have Stuart Johnson, please. Hi Stuart, you know the score, 3 minutes, Belg after 2.
Good evening panel, and happy Cycle to Work Day. On behalf of Colchester's cycling campaign, I'd like to congratulate officers for an excellent report on the commitment they show to make active and sustainable travel a safe and convenient choice in Colchester. I want to focus on 2 of the key reasons in the report people say they don't want to cycle. It's that they don't feel safe cycling and they're worried about bikes getting stolen. We have the evidence from towns and cities across the world that we know what the answer is to keep cyclists safe. Where people on bikes have to mix with high volumes or high-speed traffic, we must provide safe cycle lanes to keep people separate from traffic. The new protected cycle lane on Head Street that I used this evening is excellent, and Essex County Council should be congratulated on building this, as should Colchester Council for supporting it. I've seen at least one member of the panel use this regularly to get to the town hall. Unfortunately, this represents just a tiny part of the east-west and north-south active travel routes that Essex promised to deliver with £4 million of government money. Heartbreakingly, over £600,000 was squandered on multiple redesigns of the Crouch Street scheme, which delivered nothing to make cycling or walking safer. Where protected infrastructure cannot be provided, vehicle speeds must be reduced. This means making the default 20 miles an hour in built-up areas. Just introducing tiny 20-mile-an-hour speed limits outside schools is an ineffective cop-out. Children need to have 20-mile-an-hour speed limits where they live, play, and go to school. If 20 miles an hour is good enough for the children who live on Chesterwell or in Rowhedge, why isn't it good enough for children in Stanway, Prettygate, Shrub End or Monkwick? Panel, please lobby Essex County Council to introduce area-wide 20-mile-an-hour limits as part of the current review of their speed management strategy. If they say they won't do this, ask them how they're going to achieve their Vision Zero ambition of eliminating deaths and serious injuries on the roads of Essex by 2040. Remind them that deaths and serious injuries on the roads of Essex have recently been increasing rather than going down. Please don't forget the need for lower speed limits and safer conditions on Colchester's rural roads as well. This is particularly timely given the recent tragic death of a very well-known runner and cyclist after a collision with a driver who was subsequently arrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. On the second item, the fear of having your bike stolen in Colchester is very real. There were over 400 bike thefts reported in Colchester last year. Only 2 of these were solved. The Secure Cycle Hub is excellent, but people should be able to lock their bikes up across Colchester and feel confident it'll be there when they get back. Leisure World is a disaster. It's a terrible cycle crime hotspot, and the council should be doing more to address this. Please talk to your colleagues on the Crime and Disorder Committee to question Essex Police about what they can do to address the scourge of cycle crime. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, thank you very much indeed. Again, I'm going to delegate to Jane Thompson and Emily Harrop on these items, on these notes.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, I've already made a comment about the 20 mile an hour and working with Essex County Council. We'll continue to do that. Obviously, that would be a policy decision if you and colleagues decided that you wanted to push further on that one. And I'll hand over to Emily to answer the questions about Secure Bike Park.
So in terms of what we as officers have been doing to address bike theft, which as we know is a big issue for people because it comes up, we'll talk about it later in our presentation. We have been working with the police in developing a Bikewise campaign, which is really sort of focused on educating cyclists as to the best way to lock their bike, the best locks to use, etc. We've also been promoting the bike registration scheme, and the police have actually increased the number of sessions that they've been doing at Leisure World, which I think has been helping us, acting as a deterrent as well. The Bike Kitchen offers free bike registration as well. What we're also doing is working with our partners on looking at developing an off-the-shelf bike hanger package that links in with the Secure Bike Park that we have in the city centre. And if we can be successful in coming up with this sort of affordable package, it's something that could be rolled out in different organisations and in different locations. So that's sort of what we're doing on the officer side. Thanks.
Thank you very much. You have a minute to respond.
Thank you very much. So, Chair, on the issue of cycle theft, could I ask you to make a recommendation from this panel to the crime and disorder panel to look at cycle crime as a specific item? Because it's 25% of people who have a bike stolen give up cycling entirely. It's like, I just can't be bothered. And we're losing those people. And for this panel to achieve its aims of more people doing short journeys, walking, cycling, public transport, we need cycle crime to be reduced. Could I also ask that you consider making a recommendation to Cabinet about the adoption of 20 miles an hour across Colchester, rather than at the moment it has to be individual estates, and it seems the new estates are being built with 20 miles an hour throughout, because the planners at Essex realise if we're building a new estate with lots of children living there, lots of people walking and cycling, then it should be 20 miles an hour. We really need to retrofit that to the other estates so the people living Monkwick, Shrub End, Greenstead can benefit from those as well. It's not fair that it's only people in Rowhedge and Chesterwell and estates like that who benefit. So that's what I would ask you to do, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm totally with you on both the propositions you've given me about recommendations. I'm going to ask Matthew Evans, in terms of recommendations from Have Your Say speakers, I mean, again, I'm new to this panel myself, where are we in terms of scope of making recommendations that are outside of the...
It is up to the panel. There's been two requests here. A recommendation wouldn't be to the Crime and Disorder Committee, but perhaps to the relevant portfolio holder, if the panel was minded to do that. And then the recommendation to Cabinet is within the gift of the panel, if that's what it decides it wants to do.
Fantastic. Well, I'd very much like to propose that, but I'd seek a seconder on that. Yeah, fantastic. Can we take that to a vote? Oh, certainly, Kevin.
Thank you. So I'm very careful when I come here. I don't confuse my positions. But several things have been said. First of all, while I think 20 miles an hour is sensible in some places, it must be through choice of the public, not to impose. We must never impose anything on anyone. We must ask what they want. Now, I was instrumental in getting 20 miles an hour in what was, you would deem, the old village of Rowhedge. It's gone a bit beyond that. That took nearly 4 years to do that. Not because people at Essex are slow, but there's lots of legalities to go through in the crazy way we run highways in the United Kingdom, or England, certainly. So it has both the will of the people. I had a huge petition to do it, and the vast majority of people wanted it, and we worked it out and we did it. You can't just impose it. That's the first thing. You have to get the will of the people behind you. And no one should impose their views on anyone else. If it comes forward and it's an overwhelming view to do it, and there's no traffic issues with it, invariably it goes through. We've seen that. And certainly the County Council, my colleague, Councillor Cunningham, is reviewing the speed management policies at the moment. The other thing I want to say is, while it's sensible the City Council responds to the consultation and maybe lobby the Essex County Council to do it, it is not in the competencies of the City Council to ask or impose 20 mile an hour speed limits. We must understand, while we have this crazy two-tier local government system, we must understand who looks after what.
I hear you, Councillor Bentley. Okay, Matthew, help me out here. I would still be minded that I would like the portfolio holder on Cabinet to be aware of the conversation that we've just had. And I also think it's important that we register our views as a city council and the views of the public. Could we, Councillor Julian?
Chair, could I suggest a way forward on this issue? Perhaps we could ask our transport to do a paper that comes to the next environment and sustainability meeting so that we can consider this with a bit more information rather than making an ad hoc decision on the night, and we can see what the implications are and how we could actually add our weight to such a proposal for the whole of Colchester City Council. I mean, other councils have done it. I think Portsmouth did it back in the day, a long time ago. I think I was involved in the Wivenhoe scheme, Lower Wivenhoe, many moons ago. But it's right what the speaker says. We do need to keep our estates safe and make them possible for children to move around those communities in a much more safer way. But I think it would be good for us to have a report back to the next meeting if that was possible, Chair.
Thank you very much. That's why I'm grateful for such a strong, experienced panel to help me out here. I appreciate it, guys. Could I request that we look to have an item on that?
Chair, that's fine. And this is in relation to the introduction of the 20 mile an hour speed limit. That's fine. And with regard to the request that was made to effectively the portfolio holder that would question Essex Police around how they're tackling bike crime, is that something the panel would wish to endorse?
Yeah, Councillor Cox.
Yeah, I think that's something I certainly would be prepared to endorse as a recommendation for this panel.
Fantastic. We all happy with that? Councillor Bentley.
I'm happy. Why do we invite the police to come here?
Matthew, could we potentially look at that, having the police attend? I mean, we haven't got many meetings, so it'd be great if they could attend the next one, perhaps.
Yes.
Are you happy to leave that with officers to investigate?
I am.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, panel.
All right, excellent. Right, next. Oh dear, where's my list? Oh, beg your pardon, it's Councillor Chifley.
Good evening, panel. Tonight I will be talking about the welfare of birds in Colchester as well as river pollution. Earlier this year, Councillor Gaucher and I participated in RSPB's Big Garden Bird Watch survey, and we recorded 182 birds from 14 different species just in 2 days. Out of these 14 species, we detected 1 species with red conservation status and 4 with amber conservation status. All the gulls that we recorded had either red or amber status. They are part of our history and culture, yet we are taking them for granted. If we want our coasts and riversides to continue to have jolly and feathery sounds, then we need to start challenging our attitudes towards them and educate ourselves to learn more about their diets and habitat struggles. Therefore, I would like to request that we install signage at Castle Park regarding food which is harmful to seagulls, ducks and swans, as unfortunately many residents continue feeding our birds chips and bread, which has detrimental effects on their digestion system and also contributing to habitat pollution. Relating to welfare of our birds, I would also like to put the spotlight on Middlewick and inquire whether members of the panel or offices attending to this meeting were informed in advance regarding the wildlife and bird slaughter that Ministry of Defence initiated in Middlewick, and whether members of the panel and officers are willing to join residents in submitting complaints to the police regarding environmental slaughter carried out by MOD in our city. Moving to river pollution, in the last few weeks, the city centre has been under the heavy smell of sewage, and I would like to invite ESB to recommend council to start testing river pollution regularly, as unfortunately the previous chairs of ESB failed to apply the necessary pressure on Anglian Water, DEFRA and Environment Agency, and have them on board to run comprehensive tests in River Colne. I would like to remind the panel that regarding local Greens findings. Last autumn, when we carried out river pollution tests, we detected heavy metals 10 to 1,000 times the legal limit. While water companies are rightfully receiving the spotlight due to sewage that we can see and smell, we should start investigating and maybe start asking more serious questions to industries and quarries that we have in and around Colchester. Heavy metals are silent killers, and not only they can destroy habitats, but they are also transferable risks which can spread from polluted animals and plants. Thank you.
I'm sure you had lots more to say as well, so I know you're going to be sticking around for this meeting and you've got more contributions. I'm going to delegate this to Mel Rundle. There's a number of points there. I know you mentioned in your speech that some of these points will be picked up a bit later on, but we'll do our best to address some of it now as well.
Thank you. So in relation to your first point in regard to requesting a recommendation to Cabinet to install a sign educating people about what to feed and what not to feed our birds, should the panel be minded to make such a recommendation, then I'm sure that is something that operationally we could achieve down by the boating lake, for example, where obviously that's the hot spot, isn't it, for where people feed our birds. In relation to Middlewick, that's quite a detailed submission, and I would just say that none of the team were aware of the incident that you're suggesting, and I've spoken to the officers in our planning team, and they've said a similar submission was made to full council, and we would just recommend that the police and other relevant authorities are involved in relation to the crime that you're suggesting took place on Middlewick. But I think I'd say with some certainty that no one on this panel was aware of the issue that you're describing. And then the final one, which I've completely forgotten, forgive me, it's been a long day. Oh, the river testing, sorry. I did try and prepare some stuff ahead of thank you for submitting in writing, by the way. So, in relation to river testing, so regular river testing is already undertaken in a variety of ways. Colchester Canoe Club are key leaders in this area, working with the Environment Agency and Anglian Water, and helping with other research at the University of Essex. They're carrying out a variety of work, sampling and testing to look at the various aspects of river health. Involved in Anglian Water's River Clean and Beach Care project, carrying out annual river cleans of litter from riverside paths, banks, as well as on the water. Undertaking regular testing for Anglian Water as part of their Get River Positive citizen science project. Our citizen science pilot project launched in 2023. It supports communities in understanding and safeguarding watercourses in our region, and I can share this with you, Councillor, if rather than you typing it all up. They've provided community groups with water surface testing kits alongside training and guidance, and the kits measure indicators such as pH, temperature, ammonia, nitrates, chlorine, dissolved oxygen, phosphates, and supporting the community to self-monitor safely and accurately. They aim to learn more about the health of rivers in our region. And there is also a river fly project doing silt sampling to count organisms and report findings back to the Environment Agency once a month. And again, I can share some links with you as part of the minutes and also personally. The Canoe Club are also working on a project with a PhD student at the university, carrying out water samples in the river by the Canoe Club building and at Shepham Road Bridge, which is sent to the university for analysis. The project involves many surveys along the River Colne, looking at the transfer of sewage down to the estuary, and the analysis is looking specifically at E. coli and something that I can't pronounce, enterococci. And we think the Environment Agency also carry out fish counts to monitor the population health and have found eels in the Spring Lane area. So I hope you can see there are many areas of survey work already ongoing along the stretch of the River Colne within the city, with results either feeding directly back to Anglian Water or the Environment Agency. And I can share all of that with you after the meeting.
Happy days. Thank you very much. Councillor Chifley, you do have a minute to respond if you wish.
I believe I have all the answers. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, next, we're getting there, folks, I promise you. Next, we have Alan Short, please. Alan, with respect, you know the rules. 3 minutes, Belg after 2.
I'm concerned about the powers of this committee and its involvement in environmental and sustainability decisions made by the Council, particularly made by the Cabinet. When the system was set up by the Blair government, the idea was that you'd have something mimicking what happens in Parliament, with the committees holding the portfolio holders of the Cabinet to account. Because I've looked all over and I can't find that this committee is being consulted in important environmental and sustainable issues. The first one that comes to mind is the replacement of the weir, because it's quite clear that if you do not replace the weir, there will be major impact on the environmental sustainability of the area run by the River Colne. The second issue was the invitation for an independent expert to examine the WIC. That was not even considered, I think, by the portfolio holder, who said that she never actually read the document, but the document actually said, basically, one of the things, can you please tell us the best place on the WIC to put these 1,000 houses, rather than, can you tell us what the biodiversity, etc., is of the WIC? And I'm hoping that this committee will see that report and have input from that report to the Cabinet and to the planning authority. And then finally, it was already mentioned, the breach of the law by the MOD's agents on Middlewick. But there is now a campaign to create an SSI of the land that the WIC is on. And I wondered if the committee would be discussing that and their view about whether it should be a site of special scientific interest and whether they would support that in the documentation being put to Natural England.
Thank you very much, Mr. Short. Mel, over to you, please.
Okay, so in regard to the issues around the WIC, as previously said, that is being dealt with via the local plan committee and as part of the local plan. My understanding is that an independent report, an ecologist survey, has been commissioned, but we can take that back to the relevant officers. In terms of Middlemill, as you know, that is a very complex project which we are consulting with a huge variety of organisations that have an environmental, sustainability, ecology interest. No decisions have been made in regard to Middlemill yet, because we're still gathering all the evidence and the data. It is going via our scrutiny panel, but when get to a point where we do have some clear options to put forward, I'm more than happy to share that report with this panel alongside all of the feedback and evidence that we've had from all the organisations that have been involved. But no decision has been made about the future of the weir.
Mr. Short, you have a minute to respond.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, I can't say I'm terribly happy because I would have thought this committee would have been involved in the discussions of the WEA, and they haven't been. That's the first thing. I would have thought that this committee was involved in the brief for the person doing the analysis of Middlewick Ranges, and that hasn't happened. The committee seems to be one that reacts rather than looks at what's going on and reaches a decision. The WEA is particularly so because one of the options being considered is that you don't replace it and being consulted on, and that might be the cheapest option, but it isn't the most environmentally one. And I would have thought this committee would have views on these things which they should be discussing amongst themselves and then putting these views as recommendations to the executive committee of the council, the cabinet.
Thank you very much. Well, I certainly have views on both of those, so I will ask if officers can look to take that away and potentially bring some reports back for us at a future meeting, by all means. Oh, Councillor Cox, I beg your pardon.
No problem. Thank you, Alan Short. And this is a panel now, not a committee. That's a point worth making. So it has rather different powers. But I just wanted to comment on your remarks on Middlewick and the SSSI issue. And I would welcome the work of those who are seeking to put that application together.
Martin Pugh, please. In person as well, excellent. Okay, when you're ready.
Yeah, evening everyone. I'd like to start with this actually, a call on government to make the Wick a site of scientific interest. Designation would prevent development on land due to wildlife. That was yesterday's Gazette front page. Many of you may have seen that. And it's on that topic I'd like to talk today about Middlewick being of national level value, not just a local wildlife site of county level value, a step beyond that. But whether or not officially recognised as a SSSI is still incredibly important, I think, of that national level value. I'm going to start with a quick rundown of the surveys that we've done in recent weeks and months, starting with nightingales and skylark, in fact, obviously the hot topic. Now, following the previous excellent speaker on that topic, both Alan and the councillor, we have found 59 singing males within Middlewick Ranges and the wider impact area, which is a huge population. Combined with Colchester Barracks, that puts it in the top 2 UK population. That is something we should be really proud of in Colchester, rather than potentially presiding over a situation where those nightingales would fall silent. It would be devastating, really, on our watch. So Joseph Beale from RSPB said that Middlewick Ranges is one of the top sites for nightingales in the UK. It's vital that these iconic red-listed birds are properly and robustly protected. Through the local plan, a better alternative site needs to be found where people and nature can coexist harmoniously and allow the precious nightingale population to be safeguarded. And Greg Conway, senior researcher of BTO, also recognised it as the second most important population, second only to Lodge Hill in Kent. It should be noted, just finally on nightingale, that the MOD and DIO report, the Stantec report, now discredited, on page 149, stated that there are no incidental records of nightingales. Now that's contrary to every dog walker, every naturalist, and contrary to the nightingales breeding there, if they say otherwise. We know it's a really important population, and the fact that the decision on Middlewick was made on the basis of that misinformation, nothing to see here, really worrying. Barbicels, very quickly, a European protected plant, and we have found very strong indications they're breeding in Birchbrook woodland. We know they're breeding in Donnellan woodland SSSI. We know they're also feeding over Middlewick. So, of course, the loss of that feeding habitat, all the cats and the lighting and the habitat loss would be devastating. The peak count we've had 150 barbicel passes in total, 9 within an hour of sunset. That's over double the threshold that suggests a 90% confidence of breeding barbicels being present. Again, a real game-changing and very significant bit of data there. Great crested newts. In a nutshell, we've had great crested newts confirmed by eDNA analysis in Birchbrook woodland. We know they're present. Again, they weren't considered by Stantec. And finally, acid grassland, probably most significant. Large areas of the site were mislabeled as poor semi-improved when it's actually acid grassland. Just another thing that issue with the
Martin, I'm so
the
sorry.
data that put
I'm so
Middlewick
sorry.
there in the first place. My question very quickly.
Go on.
I'm going to turn it on you, actually. I've got, myself and others have got hundreds of hours of survey experience on Middlewick. Have you got any questions for me, including the recent Bug Life coalition of organisations lobbying Natural England to make it a triple SI? Just open that up to the floor.
Thank you. I've got a few things I want to say to you, if I may. Firstly, is thank you.
Thank you.
2 years ago, 5 councillors, and I'm not having stabs at people here, but 5 councillors voted against adopting local plan with Middlewick included. 3 are sat in this room. There's Councillor Mick Spindler in the audience, Councillor Sue Lissamore, myself. The other 2 are Councillor Lee Tate and Councillor Mark Gocher. Now, again, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. There's lots of new councillors as well. There's a lot of new information.
Absolutely.
You, with others, have completely shifted what I think to be the vote if it was to be had today. And there needs to be another vote for all councillors because I think you've changed it. And that's basically what I'd say is thank you. The other day I saw something on Facebook. You took some of the ward councillors out from Beerchurch and Old Heath, that neck of the woods. You took some councillors out for an early morning survey of some skylarks, I believe. I would love to join you. I'm sure other members would. I'd love you to invite us to things like that. That'd be great. I'm just going to very quickly see if other colleagues wish to speak, and then I'll let you have a little fire away. Councillor Julie Young.
Yeah, I'm sort of a bit disturbed by your opening statement, Chair, on this issue. I don't think it's the role of the Chair of this committee to be pointing fingers about how people have voted in respect to the local plan, but we'll leave that there. Speaker this evening asked if the panel had any questions for him, and I certainly do have a question for him. I think, you know, a number of us, I'm sure a lot of us would want to see the site designated as a triple SI, and obviously you've done an awful lot of work on this. So I think you would need to sort of help you really in terms of how we get that over the line in terms of getting that designation agreed. So I think if you can help us, help you to do that, then I think that would be something worthwhile for us to investigate together.
Thank you.
Very quickly, I'm just going to go round and grab the questions from others, and then I'll let you fire away. Sorry. Councillor Kevin Bentley.
Thank you. I'm just trying to remember desperately how I voted. I don't think I've ever voted for a local plan here, so I'll have to see what my record says.
There was a lot of people not attending.
I don't think I have.
As well.
Anyway, I'm trying to remember. Anyway, that's not my question. The point is, Middlewick has become a very, very important issue for this city. And all we ever hear, unfortunately, is just snippets of people in questions, have your say. And there's a lot more to be discussed here. It's beyond just the local plan. It's what we want to do with our city in that particular part of the city. And I want to chair whether, through you panel members, would consider certainly something we can put to the Cabinet member and the Cabinet, that we have a proper Colchester-wide debate on Middlewick, where we set aside, not in the Chamber, we'll go somewhere else. We have done debates before in the United Reformed Church across the road. We could be elsewhere. But it is such an important issue, and I think, campaigners have really brought this to the fore, where many people wouldn't necessarily know about it. I once lived in Langenhoe, which is the back end of Middlewick Ranges. You know, I remember it being an active army site, but also went to the Five Parishes Show, which was on the land as well. It's a beautiful part of Colchester, not seen by a lot of people. And therefore, I think we need to bring it to life. And I just wonder whether we consider asking, because we can't tell, we have to ask under our system, whether they would consider having a proper Colchester debate on this, where everyone can come along. It's not held in the regulations or rules we have. You get 3 minutes, then you get 1 minute to respond and all that. We have a proper debate on it, because I think Colchester deserves it, and I think the generations to come deserve it as well.
Absolutely.
I would welcome that, certainly. Councillor Catherine Spindler, I saw your hand very quickly.
Yep, thank you very much. I totally agree with everything the speaker said. My question would also be, and I don't know if you know because I've not heard anything, 3-4 years ago we submitted, my husband and I, Mick Spindler, a petition, I think it was around 1,800 signatures, for a wildlife corridor. Wildlife corridors actually are a piece of land that whatever happens going forward can never be built on. This was submitted to the council of that particular area, and I have no idea if anything was ever achieved from all those signatures we gained from residents in the immediate area. So I wouldn't mind knowing if that still stands and how wide that corridor would be if we were saving something. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll give you a minute to respond. I appreciate there's a lot there, so maybe we can have something in writing as well. If not, say again, Councillor Cox. No, you okay? I'll let you respond.
Can I request a minute's tough for responses?
It's tricky. I mean, I've got. There's other speakers. We've got a meeting ahead tonight. But if you could, and then anything else can come written if possible.
I'll try my best. So, Chair, firstly, thank you very much for acknowledging that. I think the elephant room is that based on the vast amount of new information, a lot of councillors have said privately and publicly that their vote would have been differently based on the new information. I think that's stating the obvious. Julie Young, Councillor Young, thank you very much for that. I'm really encouraged by just generally the atmosphere here in the room this evening of collaboration. I think in the past, as Councillor Bentley has indicated, it's been quite frustrating. It felt like one-way traffic, 3 minutes, a very quick response. This is bigger than that. And you look back at Highwoods, they had very detailed discussions for Highwoods, and they made the right decision there. And that was 40 odd years ago. So in 2024, we hope we can get that right. In terms of wildlife corridors, I would say that Middlewick at the moment is a wildlife corridor. It's one big wildlife corridor connecting Colchester to the Roman River Valley and all the triple SIs, Friday Woods.
Going to rush you to wrap up, please.
So just, finally, I think maybe the role that the Environment and Sustainability Panel could have as an intermediary to the rest of the council. And I'd like to invite you for a ramble on Middlewick and a roundtable discussion where we can have a bit more time than 3 minute back and forth.
Fantastic, I would love that.
Thank you.
I'm sure others would as well. Mel, you wanted to very quickly come in, is that right?
Yeah, apologies, Chair and panel. I do have something that I'd like to read out, which was a response from an officer to a variety of the questions raised this evening, and it was hidden in amongst everything else, which might answer some of the questions from Mr Short, yourself and Councillor Chifuglu. And I'll just read it as it's written, because it's quite covers quite a lot of facts. So Natural England advised the council to commission an invertebrate survey and botanical survey to provide independent evidence to support the master planning at the ranges. Since the brief was commissioned, work has progressed on the review, and any evidence available from the surveys will also be relevant to the considerations in respect of the site as part of the review. It was anticipated that the surveys would commence in summer 2023 and go into spring 2024. However, owing to the review and the confirmation of the budget last year, the surveys weren't able to be formally commissioned until early this year. Surveys will cover the period March to October, and owing to the horrific weather conditions this spring, survey work was unable to be carried out, so surveys will need to take place in 2025 to ensure the full coverage the March to October period. Any further periods of poor weather that prevent surveys from being undertaken this year will require more work next year. A final report will be prepared once all surveys have been completed and the data analysed. All information on the ecological findings on the site, which have been sent to the council by third parties over recent months, have been shared with the appointed ecologists. Officers and the portfolio holder have met with the Essex Wildlife Trust to discuss some of the recent third-party evidence and share concerns and provide further explanation of the process for the local plan review. The brief provided to the ecologists was agreed with Natural England and will not replace any full ecological surveys which will be required at a later stage of the process should any proposals be pursued by landowners in the future. Any prospective purchasers are fully aware of the policy requirements and the ecological value and interest, and will also be required to carry out full ecological surveys to inform any future proposals for master planning and planning application should it ever proceed to that stage. Once any information is available to the council from the independent ecologists, it will be published and disclosed to all relevant parties. As yet, no information has been made available and survey work continues. I'm nearly there. All relevant evidence, including that of protected species, will be considered when future decisions on Middlewick are made. And the ecologists are willing to meet with relevant parties and the council officers and members at the appropriate time to consider findings and discuss the matters arising. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you very much,
Can I have a quick comeback on that?
I'm afraid not.
Or can you name a date where we can actually go through that? Because there's a lot of there's a lot of correct things, but also incorrect things in that statement. So this is where I'm talking about this frustration where we could put that right within 5 minutes, or preferably a 2-hour conversation, but we're back to the one-way traffic.
Yeah, we'll take it away. We'll take it away.
I look forward to hearing.
You will do, I promise.
Thank you very
Rest
much.
assured.
Thank you.
Okay, lastly, but by no means least, my apologies for keeping you waiting. It's Robert Johnston, please.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to have my say. I'm Robert Johnson, a Community Councillor for Myland and Chair of the Myland Access Committee. I'm here tonight to talk about 3 types of sustainable transport, but I would like to start by congratulating Emily Harrop and her team for the well-written report. But, and there is always a but, whilst the reports on improvements in air quality management areas, the great work being done and given residents and businesses easy access to cargo bikes and other such initiatives, it doesn't mention the elephant in the room. The vast majority of cycling infrastructure in Colchester is substandard, of poor design, often with no or inadequate signage, and it doesn't meet government guidance as laid out in Gear Change. Even the local transport note, published in 2012, warned of the dangers in assuming cyclists' fears of traffic could be easily solved by permitting them to cycle on the pavement. I quote, "A poorly designed facility can make conditions worse for both user groups." Then along came LTN 20, Gear Change, published 4 years ago, which says, and again I quote, "Cycles must be treated as vehicles and not as pedestrians. On urban streets, cyclists must be physically separated from pedestrians and should not share space with pedestrians." A couple of years ago, I watched with curiosity as Headgate suddenly sprouted a cycle lane. And sometime later, I watched again, a bit shocked to see it was abruptly removed. How much did that little exercise cost? And all the cosmetic alterations, signs painted on the pavement or slabs installed on pavement, totally unenforceable, and again, at what cost? On page 21 of Gear Change, there's a list of 9 key design principles. While standing on a pedestrian bridge over North Station roundabout, I saw examples of 8 of these 9 key design principles being broken. The one I could not see being broken was the one which says, and again I quote, "Routes should only be designed by those who have experienced the road on cycle." I suspect that that key design principle was not adhered to. I appreciate that Colchester City Council is not the driver behind any of these infrastructure mistakes. But as you say in section 5.1.3 of this report, our sustainable transport team, travel team, have regular meetings and dialogue with Essex County Council to ensure policies are joined up and projects are carried out which make the best use of resources. Moving on to public transport, the goal of getting people to see public transport...
Robert, I'm so sorry, that's your 3 minutes.
I thought it was 2.
I do beg your pardon. No, it's definitely the 3, isn't it? Have I got that wrong? No, it's 3, I'm afraid. I'm ever sorry. I'm going to invite Mo and Emily to come back if they wish to on any of the points raised there.
Thank you, Chair. Just to reiterate, we do work with our colleagues at Essex County Council. They are the highway authority. We can say what we say, but they are the highway authority. A work in progress.
Okay.
You have a minute to respond.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to just move on a bit to the other 2 methods of active travel. Public transport. The goal of getting people onto public transport as an easy alternative to jumping in their car made ever more unachievable by the paucity of our bus services. We're just beginning to see the results of a return to public ownership of bus services in Manchester. Could it happen in Colchester? As a friend commented to me last night, A bus every 10 minutes is not the same as 2 buses every 20. And finally, very briefly, can I touch on public rights of way and planning? NPPF, the National Planning Policy Framework, paragraph 104 says, planning policies and decisions should protect and enhance public rights of way and access, including taking opportunities to provide better facilities for users. My land has approximately 35 public rights of way, including 2 right-of-ways. 18 of these, just over half of them, have either been obstructed, partially deleted, or had their local status changed, all as a result of planning decisions made by the local planning authority, and no opportunities had been taken. Thank you, and I wish you well in your endeavours.
Thank you very much indeed. We're going to move on to an item now, which I think in the discussion may address some of these points. What are you doing? Oh. I have a copy as well. Thank you very much, Steve. Thanks to all of our speakers. That was quite a long one, but I appreciate all of you greatly. There are some things that we need to feed back on and respond to you at a later date, and I will do so. And then I will move on to item 7, which we'll take, and then we'll have a break afterwards if everyone's happy. So item 7 is Sustainable Travel Projects Update, and that's going to be Emily Harrop and Jane Thompson to present, please.
Chair. Okay, my name's Jane Thompson, my colleague Emily Harrop, and we're going to be talking to you today about the work that we do and how we work with other organisations as well. Go to the next slide. So in our presentation today, Emily and I are going to outline our work. We're going to tell you about the national and local context, showing we work, how our work has a cross-reach and fit with other organisations to take forward and deliver joint aspirations. Sustainable Travel, Our Approach, was a document developed in 2022, and it sets out how we will deliver and support a higher proportion of people travelling sustainably. It includes the evidence base and what the community have told us. We'll update you on our projects, we'll talk about our next steps and suggest how you can perhaps support our work. So the background, the policy framework and requirements are set by government, for example, standards for cycleway provision, air quality, etc. As the planning authority, we set out where developments can be located and require developers to ensure that those using the developments have options to travel sustainably. Essex County Council are the highway and the transport authority, but we use our influence to help get investment in Colchester for our priorities. Our projects complement those of Essex County Council. An example of working with Essex County Council is the development of the Colchester Future Transport Strategy and supporting Essex County Council in their funding bids and, of course, the delivery of the projects. The Colchester City Council-led projects will be outlined in the following slides. So, our approach. When we developed Sustainable Travel, Our Approach, we identified 2 goals: increasing the proportion of short trips made by sustainable transport and reducing air pollutants in the AQMAs. The key focus areas are transport choice, less reliance on car use and ownership, high quality cycling and walking infrastructure, support to encourage sustainable transport. Our approach was developed using input from the local community. Next one. Much of our work is influencing Essex County Council and others to get the best investment for Colchester. This includes the local highway panel and developing schemes which align with the future transport strategy. For example, the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, as well as helping promote park and ride and bus services. Essex Pedal Power is also an example of where we work together with supplying bikes to disadvantaged communities. We also work internally with colleagues in helping deliver sustainable travel within the Town Deal and Levelling Up Fund projects. In promoting rail, we work with Greater Anglia, the rail operator, and the Community Rail Partnership in helping to encourage train travel. Also, Essex County Council are developing an EV charging strategy focusing on providing EV charge points in places where they are less commercially viable for the private sector. Essex County Council have developed a Levi funding bid to help deliver these. And of course, it's important that in these hard economic times that all organisations work together with partners to get the best outcome for sustainable travel. Next one. So how do we do it? Our approach to increasing the number of people walking and cycling, we do this in 4 stages. In step 1, we find out what the community want. And by community, we mean local businesses as well as other stakeholders and residents. Step 2, we work out how we can deliver the idea. Is funding needed, or perhaps lobby those better placed to deliver it? Step 3, we translate the idea into a definable project using design and deliver it, usually working with stakeholders to ensure the biggest impact. And step 4, we test what we've delivered and make any necessary changes to help make the project successful.
So each year we attend lots of community events and to speak to people on the ground. So this year so far we've attended 12 events and we've had over 400 conversations. We try and attend a diverse range of events. So this year it's included International Women's Day, Colchester United Football's Green Weekend, Monkwick Fun Day, and also recently the Diversity Carnival and Festival. So we have key themes that have come up over the last 3 years with the same barriers raised, and we've heard some of those barriers through the Have Your Say today. So through our work to influence Essex County Council and our funded projects, we seek to address these barriers, and we'll talk about some of those projects in our presentation in a minute. I think it's important to point out that this fear of cycling on the roads and lack of joined up off-road cycle paths continues to be the main barrier that people talk to us about and tell us stops them from cycling. So this slide shows the raft of different organisations that we collaborate with. We also work with internal partners, which is why the Colchester City logo is on there. It's really important that we keep the dialogue going with our colleagues to make sure that projects they may be delivering also promote and support active travel. We network with all our stakeholders regularly, and we find that joint working can really lead to better outcomes for active travel, which sometimes can be delivered through projects that seemingly are unrelated to begin with. So we have to bring in funding to deliver our projects, and this is through either through attending development team and requesting Section 106 funding, and also putting bids into government departments such as DEFRA. So between those, we've brought in over 1.7 million from Section 106 and 1.42 million from bids to government departments. We take an asset-based community development approach to all of our projects, and where we can, we work with the community to co-design them. We've gained a reputation locally and nationally and are often sought out by other local authorities for advice about how we've delivered our projects. And over this year and last, we've presented at 5 national conferences. We also use our in-house expertise to support our colleagues as well. So to start talking about some of our project areas. So the Colchester Travel Plan Club is hosted by the council, but funded by its members. And it's a network of businesses working together to implement workplace travel plans. The Travel Plan Club supports the members with things like public transport discounts and active travel promotions. We're working closely with the Business Improvement District, and we're also working with our members to develop a new Travel Plan Club offer to reflect new ways of working. We mustn't forget to talk about our own travel plan and the work that we're doing to reduce our drive to work figures. We're part of a national accreditation scheme called ModeShift, and we've recently achieved good for our travel plan, and we're aiming to be very good by next year. So this slide just shows some of the activity that we've been undertaking this year. So it includes work with Shrub End, offering a wellbeing day and a number of doctor bikes. We've created an umbrella pool across 5 sites, which has been really popular with all the rain that we've had this year. And we're also about to launch an EV salary sacrifice scheme.
Okay, thank you. The community want quality infrastructure to help them choose to walk and cycle more. We help deliver this by working with County Council in reviewing the LC Whip for Colchester and other policies like Colchester Future Transport Strategy. We also help Essex County Council design and deliver the individual routes and schemes. And one we're looking at the moment is secure parking for flats where residents don't have a place to store their bike. We also work with planning colleagues to ensure sustainable travel is prioritised in developments and that Section 106 funds are secured to help mitigate the development where appropriate. Projects are developed and delivered using the Section 106 funding. And a recent example of this is the bus shelter and stop and improvements in Magdalen Street, which was paid for by the host development. So one project we're delivering is the animating King Edward Quay and the Swing Basin, the opposite side of the river to the university. This is an example of our team securing Section 106 funding from student accommodation developers and working with residents and stakeholders to develop a scheme which will enhance the environment, encourage more walking and cycling in the area, and design work we're hoping will be starting later this year. Another example is a project being delivered by Section 106 funding again from student accommodation and also the Police and Crime Commissioner, and that's the Walk with Words wayfinding project. This incorporates physical wayfinding as well as links to digital content. The community have been working with the university creative writing course to develop the content which will evolve and be curated by Colchester Institute and Essex Book Festival. The wayfinding posts are expected to be installed this autumn and it will link the city centre with the university and then a spur university to Grinstead. Fixing the links a joint Essex County Council, Greater Anglia and City Council project, and it welcomes those arriving at the station and wayfinds them to the city centre. 9 elements were delivered as part of Phase 1, including the yellow flags and elephants. Phase 2 included the trees in planters in North Station Road and soon to be installed Beth Chatto designed drought planting scheme on the Albert Roundabout. Next one. The Colchester Bike Hub investment in our infrastructure has enabled the opening of the Colchester Bike Hub, and this includes the secure bike park managed by SpokeSafe. We think this pay-as-you-go cycle park is the first in the region. Colchester Bike Kitchen, the community bike workshop, is also housed at the Bike Hub, along with the Colchester e-cargo bike library, and you will hear more about that in the next few slides. Bikewise campaign is about reducing bike theft, which is a reason given for not cycling in the city centre. The campaign helps educate cyclists to lock their bikes using a quality lock. City centre bike racks have been stickered and the police have carried out sweeps of parked bikes, grading them on how well the bikes and the locks have been locked to the Sheffield stands and grading them to let the owner know of their results. The secure bike park is also promoted in this campaign, and we know it's working as recently the bike park was full with no more spaces to book. Next. Public transport. We help to promote public transport by working with others. As we've already said, we are not the Transport Authority, but we're with Essex County Council. We're involved with the Bus Blueprint. It's a quarterly meeting chaired by Essex County Council and attended by reps from the bus companies and the BID, hospital and the university. It's primarily to share what organisations are doing and coordinate efforts to ensure smooth bus operation, find improvements where possible, and also how to promote bus travel. Promoting public transport has recently become a focus for the BID. We work with planning colleagues to get Section 106 contributions towards bus stops and shelters. We're also members of the Essex and South Suffolk Community Rail Partnership. This group of rail operators, Essex County Council and District Councils, help promote the rail service and encourage more people to use rail. One of the partnership's projects is to involve the local community in improving the station waiting areas, and one of the pictures on the slide there are volunteers at Marks Tay Station that have been doing some painting within the station itself. Over to you.
In response to feedback from the community saying that they'd like the chance to try out different forms of transport, we've obtained funding to set up some pay-as-you-go services. So one of these is e-bike, e-cargo bike shared bike hubs. And what we've done is set up one ourselves, which is in the city centre, as Jane mentioned, in the hub. And then we've also worked with volunteers in Newtown to set up a community-led hub. And the idea behind this was to test and contrast the two different models, learn from both of them, and then develop a bit of a sort of prototype for other communities to implement their own shared bike hubs going forward. So now we've got both hubs up and running. We're really beginning to get a lot of learning out of these hubs, and we're now working to develop the off-the-shelf package that I mentioned earlier. So we're looking at both the sort of bike hanger secure parking model, but also one that any community could implement fairly easily to offer shared bikes. We've recently, ourselves and the Newtown Hub, have worked with Wivenhoe Bike Kitchen to put in a funding bid for them to set up their own bike hub, and that's been successful. So we will be working with Wivenhoe on this sort of prototype off-the-shelf package. We'll then be able to roll out to others. We've also set up an electric car club with Enterprise Car Club. We have 2 cars, one in Priory Street and one in Rowan House. The idea is that we expand the network so that we've got a range of cars across Colchester, ideally one within 10 minutes walk of people. There's also a van that an enterprise themselves have put in at Gosbecks. So we're expanding the network through building car club obligations into developments and also working with partners who are interested in putting a car club car on their sites. As well as offering an alternative to a first or second car ownership, it's also a cheap way to try an electric car for someone who's thinking about buying their own. To complement the sort of pay-as-you-go services, we've also set up Try Before You Buy. So we've had this in place for a few years for businesses, but recently got funding so that we could set it up for residents as well. We have all our business champions out there and lots of great case studies from them, and we've also been working with residents who already own cargo bikes to reflect their stories as well, to help encourage people to take up the Try Before You Buy scheme. Hires will be up to 1 month, and we've bought a range of different bikes which are all at different price points, and that's all been based on the feedback we've had from the community. And then obviously we have already got the Tier on-street e-scooter trial, which we're supporting Essex County Council with, and the Tier e-bike scheme. So just, you'll see the little table in there, between all these different forms of electric transport, over 1 million miles have been ridden, and obviously that comes with the corresponding NOx savings and carbon savings. We have also supported Colchester eCargo to set up. They were one of our original eCargo bike champions with just one bike. They have now developed their services and are actually employing 12 people and have got over 16 cargo bikes in their fleet. We're working with them on a city centre to home delivery service, which is really to support the economy in the city centre, to encourage people to spend more time there because they can have their shopping taken home for them, but also to support people who can cycle into the city centre and don't have to worry about their shopping. And then we have some other projects that provide further support to cycles. So we've been offering free adult cycle training. We've still got spaces there, so please do let people know about it. This is to try and improve people's confidence to either get cycling or to cycle on the roads where there isn't cycle network. We've also been doing a pilot project of Bikeability Boost with primary schools, working with Essex County Council to sort of enhance the existing bikeability to improve the chances of children being able to cycle independently afterwards. We're about to launch a new Cycle Colchester website, and we're developing a new cycling map for Colchester. The previous one's 2016, so we're reflecting all the new infrastructure. We'll be doing both a digital and a hard copy map. And then we had the Careless Pollution campaign, which initially focused on encouraging people to switch off their engine whenever they waited. We had some really positive results come out of the 2023 evaluation. We've developed a whole range of free resources for schools, for volunteers and for businesses. And with our phase 3, which we're doing at the moment, we're really extending all that into active travel as well as switching off their engines. So the schools toolkit has been expanded, and we'll be working with schools from September to really try and embed that into the curriculum. We're developing an e-learning module that will be free for businesses to use, and we've got funding for 2 new officers to support all the engagement and promotion on the Careless Pollution campaign and the other things I've talked about today. So in terms of air quality and what this all means for air quality, well, our projects have contributed to improvements in air quality, and we were able to revoke air quality management areas 2 and 4 last year and shrink AQMA 1. This is because of continuous improvements in air quality, and these areas met DEFRA's 3-year threshold. The remaining areas are north end of Brook Street, north end of Mersey Road, and St John's and Osborne Street, and these are all got the same characteristics of having a strong canyon effect, which traps the air pollution and doesn't allow it to disperse. So the current situation at the moment is that a new air quality action plan is being developed. The draft will come out sometime this month, and monitoring continues through diffusion tubes and also through the sensors that Essex County Council currently have in place.
Okay. Thank you. So next steps, we're undertaking a strategic messaging exercise facilitated by our communications partners, Meadows. We held a workshop with key internal stakeholders whose work overlaps with our own Essex County Council and Active Essex. The aim of the workshop was to help us identify areas of commonality and how we can better frame our work to help the public understand what we're trying to achieve, how everything fits together, and how it can benefit individuals. A strong focus on health came out of the workshop, which resonates with our initial community engagement outcomes at the start of the first DEFRA project. We hope that, as well as helping us with how we frame our work, that this will be something that our partners may also be interested in adopting. So, why is Chris Whitty on our screen? Our team recently attended and presented at the Active Travel Conference in Leicester, where Professor Chris Whitty gave an inspirational talk on the health benefits of active travel to the individual and, of course, to the wider benefits of society. Using our learning from the conference and our work on strategic messaging, we'll be carrying out a review of the Our Approach strategy. This review will make sure that we're aligned with up-to-date thinking and policies and with the Council's recent strategic plan. We will use evidence to plan our projects, and we know it's working, as Essex County Council recently shared initial data from a count using traffic sensors across the city. This counted bikes, pedestrians and vehicles, and has shown an average overall broad trend towards increased walking and cycling, with stable or slightly reduced vehicular traffic. This is in line with the longer trend that they see across local streets. We're obviously waiting to hear a little bit more about that. So in areas where active travel interventions have been implemented, it looks like positive results are now emerging. We hope this trend continues and will continue to support Essex County Council in developing and promoting active travel in Colchester. So to continue to deliver the projects to enable the community to travel actively, this year it's all about engagement. We're going out and talking to businesses, residents, communities about the services ourselves and partners offer and finding out what other help and support people need to help to choose active travel. We'll also be working more closely with health partners too. Based on feedback from the past 2 years, we've attracted funding to create a business e-learning module, expand the school's toolkit to include active travel, and create a new cycle website and map, as Emily mentioned earlier. So these are going to be the focuses for the next year. Next page. So the last slide. Please, we ask the panel to continue to support and champion our work to enable residents, workers, businesses and visitors to travel actively in Colchester.
Thank you very much indeed. That was extensive and there's a lot of good work going on. I'll open it up to panel members. Councillor Kevin Bentley, I saw you first.
Thank you very much indeed. Superb. You see why I declared an interest in Essex County Council, because it's about every third word with my Essex County Council. And that proves the partnership. And while we have this two-tier system, wouldn't it be great if we didn't, and we were a proper transport authority where we could set the bus routes and we could talk to the train companies and make it work better for people. I thought that was exceptionally good. My only comment is it was very city centre centric. So, for instance, we have 6 train stations in the city of Colchester. Some of them are very difficult to access by public transport or by cycle. I'm not saying this is a city council matter. I think we need holistically to think about it. Hence, I think if we didn't have several tiers of local government, we could do it better, but we do at the moment. I will keep saying that until we get it. But my view is I think we as members need to do more. And at this point, I should say, Chair, I need to give my apologies at 8 o'clock. I need to catch my bus back to Mersey Island, which is just after 8 o'clock, where I'll be having actually a meat-free pasta dish. I'm ticking all the boxes tonight. I'm not being facetious, I mean it, by the way. But we have to lead by example, don't we? And I've always said that, both at Essex County Council and here. I'm able to get my bus from Mersey to Colchester Town and then get off the other end at County Hall. But I'm able to do that, and I'm lucky. Many people don't, particularly in rural areas, and we are seeing more bus services withdrawing as well as time goes on. That's why we need to get hold of that franchising quickly. And even with the £2 bus fare, which certainly the last government put in, it's until October, I think, and I hope this government will carry that on as well. So I think we need to think bigger and be more ambitious and talk about every person that lives in the city centre boundary. So while it's great in the city centre itself, it needs to widen out. We need to help you, so it's not criticism, we need to help you do that. We didn't talk about the RTS, which is currently being built as well, which should hopefully alleviate a lot of alleviate a lot of car travel as well. But what we need to do properly here is the bus companies, as it's set up, and the train companies do not align their timetables. So in my example, in the summer, it's great. My bus arrives at Military Road at 7:28, the train goes from Colchester Town at 7:35, but in the winter, it's 7:30. Which means I probably can't do it, which means that I'm not going to catch the bus. So we've got to make it easy for people. People will not transition from cars into public transport unless it's better, faster, cheaper and more reliable than getting in their car. So we have to, it's not about educating people, it's making better services. So we collectively have to campaign to make that happen. And if we are going to build more houses, we've got to think about that as well. We need to think what that means. I'm not criticising that as a policy, I'm simply saying we've got to think holistically as a government, as a council, as a county, as a region, what that means. Because you can't keep doing one thing here, hoping it's okay over there, because we know it isn't. So all power to your elbow, we need to do more as councillors, and we need to expand this across the whole city.
Thank you very much indeed. Take Councillor Julie Young and then Councillor Cox, please.
Yeah, sort of carrying on that theme, Chair, about buses, and I'll come on to cycling in a moment. But, you know, a lot of my residents want a direct bus service to the hospital. And, of course, we don't have a bus service. We have a competitive bus situation where bus companies run services where it's profitable for them to do so, and they compete with other profitable routes to get the best business, so they're chasing customers actually. I think the £2 bus fare is brilliant, and I hope it does continue. And I hope the RTS does actually start providing sort of my residents in Greenstead the ability to get up to the hospital, because that's where a lot of them need to get to. Just a slight, thanks for all your work, Jane and Emily, you do a fantastic job. But I think some of the evidence that came from Essex Pedal Power in terms of the testimony of people in Greenstead that received a free bike are actually quite heart-rending. And it's a shame that they are not featured in the presentation, because I think they've made a tremendous difference to the people there and continue to do so. So we're working in partnership, as you say, but that kind of evidence of what it's meant to people to get that free bike, I think is something we need to capture and actually promote. For me, Kevin's right, we as councillors need to do more in terms of promoting what's available. So while, you know, I see on there's a car club you can join, there's bikes that you can take advantage of, I have no clue how much that costs or how you go around actually arranging that. So some simple information to us, you can get a bike for a week for, I don't know, £5 or whatever it is, would be something that would be really useful for us to have at our disposal that we could share with our residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, agreed. Councillor Cox, please.
Thank you, and I echo a lot of what Kevin says. Lead by example. I'm a cyclist, and I'm the person who Stuart's seen cycling on that cycle lane. So I've spent a month in Westminster, and what that has taught me is obviously the importance of national government, and it's been very thrilling, but it's also absolutely reinforced the importance of local government, because that's where the change that needs to happen will occur. So although national government will set infrastructure and incentives and those kinds of things, and hopefully offer devolution, which I think we all want to see to give us more local power over things, all the things we've been talking about tonight. It's local government where the behaviour change and the modal shifts will happen, and it's through exactly the projects that you've been doing, which are so important. No substitute for that. Glad to see the Newtown Bike Kitchen and community hub is working, and to see how that goes. I had and the air quality action plan. I know when I was on this committee in the previous municipal year, it was something we were very keen to see, the continuing problems in air quality in places, the canyon areas like Brook Street and others. So keen to keep up with that air quality action plan. I had a practical question, since we've got the leader of Essex County Council here with us. The Park and Ride up by the Northern Gateway, as I understand it, still closes at 9 p.m. And that means that people coming into Colchester for a night out or to work, or indeed to go back out after such a thing, they're really limited in their ability to use it. And so whether we could I don't know, recommend to Cabinet that we take another look at the Park and Ride with our partners in Essex County Council, because that would, for example, free up hospital car parking spaces, which I know is a very big deal, and would promote greater use of public transport down the Northern Gateway area.
Great. Councillor Kevin Bentley, I know you're here as a city councillor, I appreciate that, but as that point has been made, will you be able to...
Well, if the leader of Essex County Council were here, I'm confident he would say this. In that, first of all, I think why county councils running the park and ride, it should be done by the local council, because you were competing all the time with car park fees and the park and ride. It's just doing that all the time. Yes, I'd love to. I think we would love to open it much longer for people. We need to get people on it in the first place, and we need to promote it more than we currently do. And we need to make sure, I mean, it is a great service. If you use it, it's a great service. And I was listening to what Councillor Julie Young was saying, because we're just about to extend the Chelmsford one, so it goes to Broomfield Hospital and links up the other two park and rides. Now, we have one park and ride here, and that's something we ought to consider here. I know it was done some time ago, or thought about. I think we need to think about that a bit more. We've got to make it easy for people, you see, but there comes a cost, of course. Buses don't run on air, if only they did, but they don't run on air. So we have to think about how we pay for that properly, and that's why we do need proper subsidy to go into it. And I'm a great believer in that, and I think that's what should be happening, and I think we need to be talking to government about that. We have to have a proper conversation. I keep saying a joined up conversation. Ambitions to grow the economy here, you won't grow the economy unless people can actively move around better to get to their jobs that they want to go to. And not everyone can afford to have a car, by the way. So we need to make sure we're making it easy for people. So absolutely, I'd like to do that. It requires much more detailed conversation and a better conversation with government, which we would get, of course, if we had devolution. Have I mentioned that? But we would get it.
Thank you very much for that. Jane and Emily, there's some points raised there. I don't know if you want to address anything.
Just on the city centre focus, we're really aware of that. It is partly because obviously the air quality management area is in the city centre, so the funding comes with a focus on the city centre. But what we've tried to do is use that funding to test things, test new services, with the idea that once we've kind of got that learning, we can find a more easier and cost-efficient way to then roll them out in other areas. Hence, you know, Wivenhoe will be the third bike hub. Hopefully we'll get bike hubs in other areas as well. The same with the car club. There's different models of car club that could potentially work elsewhere. So we are aware of that, and we will be trying to sort of address that going forward. I don't know if you want to say anything about buses.
Not quite about buses, but just to say that many years ago we were involved in a government initiative, one of the pilots for a station travel plan at Colchester Station, and as you say, the 6 railway stations in the city area, and of course end-to-end journeys is so important. Now, I don't know if over the last few years in government they've been looking at station travel plans, focusing on that, but it was a really good initiative where the bus companies could get together with the rail operators and start to look at how people get door to door, not just station travel plans, but opening that up wider, with mobility hubs where somebody gets from their house, can perhaps get on a shared bike to get to the railway station or to the bus stop, to be able to park their bike at the bus stop to then make a further journey. All of these end-to-end journeys is so important because very few of us use one mode as we step outside our front door and then get to our destination.
Thank you very much indeed. Sorry, go.
Oh, yeah, I was just on a couple of the other points. I can read it, I haven't put my glasses on. Yeah, the testimonies from Pedal Power, that is something we could definitely look at in the future. We did have one picture of a guy who's got a pedal power bike. I don't know if you noticed the orange. I had a lovely chat with him the other day about how it's affecting his life positively. So it was really good. It was at the resident panel, actually. So, yeah, can certainly look at incorporating more testimonies from them in future presentations. But also in the information sharing, we can certainly get some information out to you. We've got web pages, etc. We can share all those links so that you can share that information with residents and local businesses. Thanks.
Brill, thank you very much indeed. Anybody else? No? Oh, Councillor Chifley, yes, of course. You're very welcome to join us at the table.
I'm aware of the time. After the break,
How much have you got?
I have 5 questions and 1 comment.
He asked prior if he could speak on the item, and I agreed that he could. Yeah, go for it. And then we'll wrap it up and take a break, guys.
Right. I'll start with referring section 5.7, page 32. I welcome that Council is planning to continue to deliver its 5th DEFRA successful bid, which includes funding for 2 additional offices, one focused on community, the other on business. I can see that the community focus officer started in January 2024 and the business officer is still to be recruited. The number of projects we will be working on are quite impressive, and I would like to thank both officers and councillors. Moving to my questions, the first one is from section 5.7 in page 32. Could I ask who is the community focus officer that was hired in January 2024, as I would love to meet with them and learn about their reflection on Council's work and ambitions. My second question is regarding section 5.2.2. Could I ask how this conclusion was reached and request a copy of the report that shows that more people are switching off their engines. Moving to question 3, could I request a copy of the report that shows we achieved a drop in air pollution, and also ask officers in their opinion what were the things that work and things that could be improved. Moving to my 4th question, which is regarding section 5.6. It was noted that in 2023 and up to July 2024, Colchester City Council was presented at DEFRA's first Air Quality Symposium, which happened in September 2023. Could I request who represented the council and what were the new learnings and creative ideas that we learned through the symposium and other attendees? And my last question is regarding section 6 and 6.1, which talks about equality, diversity and human rights implications. While talking about climate crisis, claiming that the report has no specific equality, diversity and human rights implications might not be quite fair and accurate. And while it is great that there are free cycling classes for adults, and we are actively working with the ECC and schools to provide cycling classes, we have many families who are unable to buy bicycles for their kids, or unable to afford cycling classes for their kids, or do not have the information accessible to them about the services and trainings that are available to them. Most of the migrant and refugee families are in low income, and with the cost of living crisis, that is also the case for many working class residents too. So my question would be, how can we make sure that residents are aware of all the support that is available to them? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shifley. There's 5 big questions there. I appreciate, for the sake of time, and obviously, I've given you the freedom to speak, but obviously you're not a panel member. We'll look to give you some written answers, but I don't know if there's anything, Jenny or Emily, that you could potentially answer. If not, I'm more than happy for some sort of written.
Just quickly, yeah, all the reports that you want, I can share those. That's easy to share. The point on migrants and refugees, our part of our engagement this year is really to target groups that are the ones that are less likely to be aware of what we're doing. So although we haven't done it yet, we certainly have intention to work with as many different community groups as possible. So we will be promoting all of our services and the things that are available to people this year. That's partly why we need these extra staff to help us deliver those. But I think everything else, yeah, we need to reply in writing.
Brilliant, I appreciate that. Thanks very much, Councillor Chifley. Is there anybody else or panel members who wish to speak before we wrap up the item? No? Okay, 2 recommended decisions to help the community in their desire to travel sustainably by supporting the work of the Sustainable Travel Team in working with the County Council and partners to deliver infrastructure projects to enable travel behaviour change, and support the progress being made by the City Council in delivering the key goals and outcomes of sustainable travel in Colchester. Is there anything else that anybody else wishes to add? Otherwise, are we all agreed? Councillor Bentley?
Well, just could we say the whole city of Colchester, not just Colchester, okay? Just to make that case, because otherwise, I understand why it is as it is, but we are talking to all of the population, not just the bit in the middle.
Was that noted, ma'am? Yeah, perfect. Everybody happy with that? Excellent. I'll wrap up that item. We'll take a break for 10 minutes and we'll come back at 10:02. Councillor Julie Young, do you have to depart? Okay, well, and Councillor Bentley? Okay, we've shrunken panel now. Well, thanks everyone so much for being here, you two, and enjoy your evening. We'll take a break and we'll come back at 10 to 8. So we'll move on to item 8, which is the Climate Emergency Action Plan. Ben, are you leading on this one?
Could I have the slides back, please, Richard?
Yeah.
Okay, it looks like it's going to work. Yes, so for those who don't know me, I'm Ben Plummer. I'm the Climate Emergency Officer, and just going to give you a bit of an overview, basically, and an introduction to our work on tackling climate change. So if you go on to the next slide. So yeah, so the structure, basically, just a quick reminder of our initial climate emergency declaration and what we stated within that. I then give an overview of the council's emissions, something that we measure annually. And then I'll start to go into the different themes of our action plan and some of the progress and achievements we've made with actions within that, before then outlining some of the upcoming priorities for the next year or so. Next slide. So as a reminder of our climate emergency declaration, this was back in 2019. We said we wanted to be a carbon neutral organisation by 2030 in terms of our greenhouse gas emissions. But the climate emergency declaration was, I think, a bit more of a statement than that. It was talking more about beyond carbon issues such as waste, air quality, biodiversity and more, and also about taking action across the whole of Colchester and not just sort of specifically to do with sort of council operations. We want to support organisations in the community to reduce the whole environmental impact of the city. Next slide. Yeah, so I've already given an introduction of the council's emissions and where they come from. So the first bit is on gas consumption. So within each of our buildings, most of them have a gas boiler. So we've got heating consumption associated with that. And obviously since the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, staff working from home has become a massive way of working. And so we do estimate emissions associated with staff working from home and gas consumption from that by doing a survey of staff. We also look at the fuel consumption used by our fleet vehicles. Most of them are diesel, but increasingly more of them are becoming electric vehicles as well. We have 20 out of our 128 fleet of vehicles are electric. We also do look at electricity consumption within buildings. This could be for building lighting, things like controlling elevators and bits like that. We also look at the losses from where the electricity is produced, the transmission losses along the national grid, which is sort of like an indirect impact of the electricity that we use. Again, staff working from home. And I put building heating on there as well because we do have some buildings that are operated by air source heat pumps which use electricity for heating rather than gas. Then fuel consumption, but for staff, we look at staff commuting for work and also staff business travel where they're using their own cars to travel to meetings and site visits. And then we also look at the emissions associated with the supply and treatment of the water that we consume within our buildings, and the emissions associated with the waste produced from our council buildings as well. Next slide. So yeah, I don't expect you to fully interpret everything from the bar charts there, but the numbers may be easier in the report to look at. So we've been monitoring our emissions since our declaration, so we've been doing that for 6 years now. And we've seen a broad sort of decrease, although steady, over the last sort of 5-6 years. In recent times, the main bit that I think has decreased has been from the fleet, and that can be shown through the introduction of the electric vehicles, as I said already. And there's also been a few changes. I think obviously commuting has gone down massively as well, since sort of pre-pandemic and now after it. Actually just before the next slide, the 2023-24 figures on there are to be confirmed. There's still some things that we're finalising with that, but we wanted to try and put something on there for you to give an overview of that. So yeah, next slide. So some of the emerging trends from the 2023-24 financial year compared to the previous one. As I mentioned, fleet emissions have decreased because of more electric vehicles. We've also seen a decrease in our working from home emissions. In 2023, we had Rowan House, one of the staff's main office, reopened, a new refurbished environmental office, so more staff work from home. More staff return to the office rather than working from home, and that means a reduction in working from home emissions. It does have a slight interaction with commuting as well, because obviously if more staff are going into the office, it does increase the amount of commuting that's done, and we have seen an increase in commuting emissions as a result, but it's sort of not the working from home decrease sort of counters that increase, if that makes sense. We've also seen our electricity emissions increase. This isn't actually due really anything to do with us, because our electricity consumption across our estate has actually decreased overall. But in 2023, the amount of natural gas that was used to produce electricity in the grid increased compared to in 2022. So there's actually an increase in sort of the emissions associated with electricity generation in the grid, which means has led to our overall electricity emissions increasing. We've also seen an increase in our waste emissions as well. I think the waste is our most poorly understood in terms of the data that we use for it. We do assume, we simply look at the number of bins that we have in our buildings and how often they're collected. We assume that each of them are 100% full when they're collected, and that might not be the case. And the main reason for the increase really is, again, that return to Rowan House. It wasn't something that we've been reporting on the last couple of years, and that's obviously an additional factor this time. Next slide. Yeah. So now going on to the wider action plan, we've got these themes. For those who might remember, actually the current action plan has 9 themes. We've shifted it down to 8, and I'll explain why a bit later on. But these are the 8 themes. So the stuff that I've just been talking about all relates to reducing carbon emissions from our buildings and fleet. But obviously we've got 7 other themes in there as well, and actions that we're doing in wider Colchester. So yeah, just going to go over a few highlights from the last year to give an overview. Next slide. So in terms of our actual fleet, just to touch on that again, in this year we had a new fleet transition strategy approved at Cabinet, which aimed to outline how we're going to transition our fleet vehicles to low emission alternatives by 2030. I also referred to the fact we opened our Rowan House to refurbish Rowan House with its new air source heat pumps, LED lighting and ventilation systems, again in 2023. Really positive project that was. We're sort of halfway through trying to understand a little bit more about the risks of climate change to the council, because a lot of our work traditionally sort of focuses on trying to reduce our environmental impacts and emissions to reduce the impacts of climate change, but we already know that climate change is well in sort of having its impacts. Extreme temperatures, storms, flooding and drought have all affected Colchester sort of and wider sort of eastern region in recent years, so we need to know how we're going to adapt to some of those changes. So I've been going around some of the service areas and sort of understanding what we're already doing, how are we already prepared for things like extreme weather, and what more do we need to do for sort of those potential impacts. Going to sort of the biodiversity side, we've run At the start of this year, we had the 17th year, I think it was, of the Trees for Years event, which is the free tree and shrub giveaways to residents, which again was a big success. And then basically the second half of the slide, I think pretty much Emily and Jane have already covered. So I think we can move on to the following slide. So going on to waste now, I'm sure most of you will be aware that we've launched a recycling waste strategy consultation that's still out to members of the public to have their say on that. And this is to do with obviously updating our new strategy, mainly informed by the Government's Environment Act, which has put new sort of statutes in place that local authorities will have to collect consistent recycling materials, and also demands on businesses to separate out their recycling as well. So it's kind of in response to that and sort of noting how we're going to collect waste going forward. We've also continued to roll out smart waste bins across Colchester. These are basically bins that have small solar panels on top, which then have compacting mechanisms in there, which means that more waste can be stored in them than traditional bins, which helps to reduce sort of littering and sort of overflow of bins. This is one that's in Mersey, which has helped actually reduce the number of general waste bins that we have there, which again reduces the pressure on crews to go around and collect those. Moving on to planning, so towards the end of 2023 we adopted 3 new supplementary planning documents on climate change, biodiversity and active travel. These documents are sort of aim to outline the sort of best practice guidance for developments in terms of making them more environmentally sustainable. And then sort of following on from that really, we've been working with Essex County Council and their Climate Action Planning Unit. They've been getting a lot of evidence and support with that from legal consultants and other sort of housing consultants on actually what is the evidence base for building to net zero homes in Colchester. It's a key commitment within the Essex Climate Action Commission's plan. And they've, over the last sort of year or so, they've really shown that it's financially viable and legally viable to actually, within sort of planning regulations, to actually ask developers to build net zero homes. And there's a really good policy actually on the Essex County Council website, which I thoroughly recommend people have a look at. It's very readable. Moving on to energy, but the sort of domestic side now. Towards the end of 2023, we started working with a charity called Better Housing, Better Health, who can provide an independent energy advice service over the phone for residents, which has been really useful. We've seen over 150 residents call that since that started in October. They can also provide much wider support than that, help with grants, fuel vouchers, and measures to improve the comfort of the resident's home, whether that be things like draft proofing, insulation, bits like that. And we've also worked with other community organisations more locally who can then provide that in-person support for residents, including the Green Doctor Scheme and also Community Energy Colchester as well. And us as a council, we've also been given grant funding to help increase the energy efficiency of people's homes. And we did a significant amount of funding to improve homes with insulation, solar panels and things like that. And then finally, moving on to actually what we're kind of doing is sort of changing the culture within the council to try and promote sort of better thinking around in the environment. We introduced an environmental e-learning course for staff at the end of 2023, which aims to give an overview of climate change and its impacts, and sort of what staff can do within their personal and working lives to reduce their environmental impact. We also did a little trial of a carbon niche training for some staff, councillors actually, in 2024, and we will continue to offer a member briefing in October to give an overview of our work. We've been participating this year in a green events pilot, which has been really interesting, learning about the aims for some new standards to come about for minimum best practice for outdoor events that they should be achieving in terms of reducing their environmental impact. We've been doing some interviews with event organisers this summer, understanding what they're already doing to become sort of more environmentally friendly events, and what the barriers they face to doing more. And then finally, as Emily and Jane have touched on some of this already, we've been trying to promote active forms of travel for staff, for commuting to work, and also for site visits as well. We've had a free park and ride scheme for most of the last year, which has seen great uptake in how that's been used for staff commuting. We've also had pool bikes as well, which staff can use too. Next slide. So yeah, a few priorities for the next year. Some of you may have seen that the fitness pool and teaching pool are going to be closing at Leisure World from the 12th of August for a week. This is to install some pool covers there, which will help to reduce heat loss and from the pools. That was funded by Sport England. We've also had, under the same pot of funding, some new motors go into air handling units at Leisure World, which help control the ventilation at the facility, which is going to see sort of big savings in energy use. And we've also got an environmental audit scheduled at Leisure World as well as a condition of that grant funding, which help us better understand how we can do more to make Leisure World a more environmentally sustainable building. We've also been, well, not me actually, but a colleague of mine has been working a lot on understanding a lot more about the energy bills that the council's had, and I've been doing audits of different buildings to identify energy savings for the council. He saved well over £100,000 in a year since he's been in. For looking at bills and meters and stuff like that, actually crunching data a little bit and seeing, right, there's actually buildings that we have but we're not even occupying anymore and we're getting billed for them. And it's sort of taking a bit of time to actually look at those gaps. We managed to save some money, which has been a really positive step. Again, linking to biodiversity and planning, through the Government's Environment Act, again, they've introduced the need for county councils to create what's called local nature recovery strategies, which are strategies for connecting up habitats of value and creating new habitats to create sort of wildlife corridors and things like that to improve biodiversity. That's being led by Essex County Council, but Colchester is a supporting authority with that. And another sort of policy that's come into play towards the start of this year has been the biodiversity net gain policy, which is to do with planning again, which is aiming to leave habitats in sort of a measurably better state than before development was put in. That's going to be a continuing sort of moving picture, really. That's why it's in sort of next steps as we sort of learn more about that. Emily and Jane have already mentioned about the Cycle Colchester website and Cycle Map that's coming up. I think that'll be a really useful resource for everyone, really, to learn about how they can cycle across Colchester in best ways and plan their journeys out. Again, linked to that sustainable travel point, supporting the delivery of the Town Deal and Levelling Up projects that will be coming forward, such as the East Hill projects, St Botolph's Roundabout, and so on. We mentioned the recycling waste strategy earlier. As that sort of develops, there's a number of projects that sit under that, including the introduction of food waste collections for flats that we'll be looking at, and a better service for businesses to help recycle their waste, as they have the obligations placed upon them to separate their recycling out. We'll continue our work supporting residents to access energy efficiency grants, as we've been doing already. And mentioned with the local plan reviews, a wider thing going on, we are going to try and replicate or edit as needed the Essex developed policies on net zero for homes and buildings. I think that'll be going out. We've already done a consultation on that, and when further consultations are done, I think we'll put forward as a preferred position from the council on that. Next slide. Final slide. So we mentioned about the action plan. The most recent version was published at the start of 2023, so starting to get a little bit out of date. So we've been reviewing that internally, going around the service areas and checking what new actions are going ahead sort of within the next year or so. What we're going to do is make the action plan a bit more easy to monitor and report on. Currently, it just sits on the website as sort of a PDF document, which means it's very hard to update anything. And if any member of the public or council looks at that, chances are a lot of it's probably out of date now. So what we're going to be doing is making the version on the website for those who know it, a SharePoint version. So basically what it'll be is a view-only SharePoint version. So it'll be published on the website in sort of an Excel document. And then when we make changes as officers to that action plan, they'll be then replicated for the public to see as well, which means sort of things are happening live and you can see what's going on, which again, as I said, makes it easier for you to know what's going on and for us to monitor and report our progress. And that is the end, I think.
Thank you very much. That was incredible. It was really comprehensive. Panel, any questions for Ben? Councillor Catherine Spindler.
A very quick one, not really a question, more. I noticed with your bins, you were saying about the bin that crushes it all down. It reminds me of the bins that you get aboard where you get a token for putting stuff into the bin. Is there not some sort of app that we can encourage for young people where not only they can get tokens through the app for recycling, but also for biking to school and other environmental things to encourage them? And they get, I'm a girl from the Green Sealed Stamp age, so, you know, as an incentive going forward, this could be something that young people can jump on, find it fun and want to build up their points.
Over to you, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously we're not in control of this, but obviously the government's still trying to introduce the deposit return schemes, which will be where you can return your bottles and cans and get your deposit returned. You get your money back, well, a bit of your money back for that extra sort of deposit put on the price of that. That's been pushed back quite a bit now. I'm not too sure of the date, but I think it's been pushed back sort of several years now. There are other sort of, I've seen in other parts of Colchester, in other parts of the UK, there are sort of things that sort of give feedback to the resident. So you've got, I actually think some of the ones on Mersey, they like talk back to you and stuff, which I think the children sort of like, and sort of commenting on positives and things like that. But if you want to promote anything to local people in terms of and them getting benefits back, I really recommend the Carbon Cutting Essex app that Essex County Council delivered. It's an app where you can complete small quizzes and look at videos and read blogs, and in return you get credits which you can then use to enter sort of prize draws for things, but you can also donate those to charities as well on the app. So that's quite a good way that they've been sort of promoting that engagement.
Fantastic. Councillor Catherine Spindler, satisfied? Excellent. Councillor Cox.
A quick question on a huge issue on biodiversity net gain strategies and local plan review and how this team is feeding into that work. Thanks.
So not probably, I mean, a lot of it is handled by the planning team in terms of like applications that are coming in and how they're considering and how they're including biodiversity net gain in it already. I know that we have looked at sort of the potential for the council to get involved in terms of actually putting forward our own green spaces and improvements that we could do on our own green spaces for habitats, putting them forward as sites that are called off-site biodiversity net gain. So where a developer can't deliver the benefits of biodiversity on the site of the development, they then have to look off-site for other sites where they can do that. I know we've sort of been looking at quite early stages as a council for some of our own green spaces, and where could we essentially get funding to improve the quality of those habitats. That is one mechanism that local authorities could use. I think that's still fairly early stages so far, though.
Yep, certainly.
I think it would be really helpful to have a list of those existing local green sites that might benefit from a BNG policy like that.
Could that be shared to us, Ben?
We could look at it. I think we could. What has been done by Essex County Council is, as part of the local nature recovery strategy, they've produced a series of maps by habitat type and have identified habitats that are sort of priority habitats. So ones that are already of high value, but sites near those which aren't necessarily of high value at the moment, but because they're very linked very closely to the high value ones, they have a high priority for improvement. We could share that with you. That's not something that we've developed, but I think that's probably sort of the best bit where we are at the moment, kind of thing. So yeah.
Happy, Councillor Cox? Excellent. I've got a question on the energy efficient grants that you briefly covered. You sent us a series of emails during July about the home upgrade grant, and that there was struggling to reach households. There was quite a poor take up on that. But you also mentioned, I've just found the email actually, you also mentioned there was quite a strict criteria, and we're going to probably end up having to give back the money. How much is that we're potentially that's going to give them back? Is there a way that the criteria can be somewhat reduced to help people to make sure that we can spend this money? And what can we do to, I know obviously there's signposting and sharing it on social media and etc., but is there more that we could do as councillors?
So this, in terms of the scale of return, we don't know. The scheme runs till March 2025, end of March 2025. And we have seen a few more sort of referrals and things coming in. It's pretty hard to determine at the moment. Technically, we've been allocated a portion of money, but we didn't actually bid for it. It was part of a consortium of local authorities, so we kind of got allocated a bit. And just to sort of mention that the underperformance isn't like Colchester only. It's pretty much most local authorities across the whole of the UK have struggled. And I think most local authorities have tried, including us as part of the consortia, have tried to lobby for the eligibility criteria to be improved in terms of the income cap that's on there. It's £36,000 combined household annual income at the moment. That got lobbied to increase to 39,000, but government declined that to happen, so that didn't happen. In terms of pushing it forward, so yeah, we have. We're trying to get, from the people who've actually received the things, I've been calling a few of them up and trying to get feedback and actually trying to do a case study, because obviously within line with our sort of social media thing, we want to make the stories and things engaging, we want pictures. Naturally, some people don't want to do that, which is absolutely fine, but we'll still continue to try and do that. The other way is, with the home upgrade grant being specifically for people who live off the gas grid, so if you have sort of things like electric storage heaters or oil boilers and things like that, it's quite regionally focused. So you've got places like Great Hawksley that are completely off the gas grid, Chapel and bits like that. And we've been out to some of those. We've tried to go to events where those places are to try and promote them. I think some of it is partly because the criteria is so strict that we struggle with the uptake. But I think it's those councillors who live in those sort of rural north wards and other areas, just if they know people who might be eligible, then to let us know. But there are, just to emphasise, there are wider sort of grant support out there beyond this home upgrade grant, and smaller support as well, as I mentioned, through the Better Housing, Better Health independent phone service. They're really good. Like, the waiting times are pretty like small. Whenever I've called them up to query something a resident said, for me, I get through to them. You can get advice. Similarly, the in-person support provided by Green Doctor and Community Energy Colchester, thoroughly recommend as well, because they can sort of tackle more sort of local issues and things like that. So,
brilliant answer. Thank you very much indeed. I appreciate it. Anybody else on the panel wish to say anything? All happy? Councillor Chiflou, I understand succinctly if possible, dear boy, but yeah, I'll let you come to the table and answer a few questions.
Right. My first question is regarding section 5.13. Could I get clarification that Colchester Borough Homes indeed banned glyphosate and hasn't been using glyphosate since April 2021? My second question is, again, in the same section. If there is an appropriate word for last year's 3-4 years program, in my opinion, it's not successful, but rather a missed opportunity and an embarrassment. As I flagged up last year, shrubs given to residents were overwhelmingly non-native species, which according to RHS and prestigious gardeners and horticultural newspaper BBC Gardener's World, had no to little wildlife value. When I brought this to the attention of ESB and the chair last year, I got an embarrassing and evasive response, and the chair failed to acknowledge and exercise ESB's role of reviewing and providing recommendations to the Cabinet and the Council. Considering that members will have greater amount of time to work on environment and sustainability related issues, as the ESB panel's meeting hours were significantly reduced, I hope and wish that panel will take a more serious approach to proactively work and come up with recommendations that will indeed make Trees for Years programme a success rather than an embarrassment. Moving to my next question is under section 5.19, page 44. Could I request that new actions added as required includes a pollinators strategy? And moving to my next question relating to no, I already mentioned this, sorry, apologies. I will move to my comments. The first one is regarding section 513, LNRS. In June, I attended to LNRS Essex members briefing, and I was the only councillor from Colchester who attended. Therefore, I must share some of my concerns with the members of the panel. LNRS is not providing solid or binding change. It is not aiming to introduce protection or special designation. I'm worried that it may heavily rely on developers, landowners, and farmers to apply, monitor, review, and inspect the progress of applying commitments and policies. One of the main solutions and approaches mentioned in the briefing was creating river buffer zones that aims to create grassland and woodland between farmland and rivers to filter pesticides and fertilizer runoff, so that water companies will spend less on cleaning up water. My question during the briefing was, how river buffers going to prevent or work if we are not campaigning against excessive usage of pesticides, soil regeneration, and excessive usage of artificial fertilizers? In these river buffers, woodland and grass won't filter, let alone survive in an area that will get high concentration of pesticides and fertilizers. Therefore, I would urge fellow councillors to participate in LNRS consultations and approach to BugLife and other organisations which has been working on establishing green corridors for many years and make this strategy a more ambitious one. 1 minute, right. And my last comment is regarding biodiversity. While talking about biodiversity in that gain, I would like to bring it to the attention of the panel that this year Cabinet revoked No Mow May. And the reason was officers advised to Cabinet that they received an increased amount of complaints. And when I requested a report, I didn't receive it yet. What's worse, in June, Council promoted garden waste collections on Facebook, and it used images of wildflowers, portraying them as weeds that needs to be kept under control. Both myself and Castle residents are very concerned that we are now treating this as a golden egg-laying hen.
Thank you very much indeed. A lot there again. Ben or other officers, I don't know if you're able to address any of the remarks made by Councillor Chifley.
Not really directly. I don't specifically work in sort of parks and greenings teams, which a lot of the questions referred to. Again, if there's written statements of those, we can look to follow those up with relevant people, yeah. But just to make you aware that in December, unless the work programme changes, there is an item on glyphosate and kind of like performance in terms of other approaches to sort of managing weeds. So that is on the panel's work programme for December.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chifley, I'm going to offer you something. Some of the stuff you've raised would probably be helpful that Councillor Martin Goss, as portfolio holder, would be able to address. I wonder if maybe you and I take this offline and we try and arrange a meeting with him or something, and we can go through some stuff. Would that work for you?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Happy days. Brilliant. Okay, everybody happy? So we're just asked to note this item. There's no other recommendations. Are we all noted? Excellent. Okay, and then that moves us on to item 9, which is the work programme. Matthew, is there anything to add, anything to change?
Thanks, Chair. No, this is a standard item. It will come to the panel every meeting. There's a couple of points that came up earlier. You were happy that officers explore the possibility of Essex Police attending the meeting around bike theft campaign, so we'll do that if you're happy with that. And there was a suggestion that a paper be presented to the panel regarding the adoption or potential adoption of 20-mile-an-hour speed limits and the surrounding information around that, if that's something you'd like to be considered.
I certainly would colleagues? Yeah. Yeah, Councillor Spindler.
I just wonder if, after the conversation earlier, whether it's something that we should put out to residents and get every residents' points of view, but I'm definitely up for 20 mile an hour.
Yeah, I think maybe if something came to the panel, and then recommendations from that could be wider consultation, something along those lines, perhaps. Okay, anything else, Matthew? No? Happy days. I think that's it. All done. Thank you very much. I enjoyed that, and I'll see you all soon.